All right, we're back. I've got my jacket off. Clearly, I'm ready. We're off and running, which is also, it's always good to get these things, get through the first couple of sessions, make sure my CEO has a good session. I always love listening to Gaurav talk about the future. It's something to behold. He's such an expert in this area. But we have two other experts now that we've gladly got on stage with me. So I'm going to hand over to them. I'll be back in a second. Well, about 20 minutes to do some questions. We have Jim Lundy, who's the founder and CEO of Aragon Research, and his colleague, Betsy, VP and Aragon Fellow. So I'm going to hand over to you, and I will exit stage left.
Good. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Dale. Welcome, everyone, to this session. I was thinking as I was listening to Dale talk that clearly when we're thinking about business evolution and business change and business transformation, a lot of the issues that we have to deal with have to do with technology and the evolving technologies that we have today. But I think one of the things that Jim and I have been doing a lot of research on is about how technology is a big part of it, but so is business model design, thinking about your business, about people and culture that all come into play here. So what we're going to talk about today is a new market that we see evolving called Tpas, Transformation Platform as a Service, which is about empowering business transformation. And we believe that by 2025, the Tpas market will subsume 45% of the current iPaaS market. And that's a pretty high probability that we have on that. If you think about it, the iPaaS market is a huge market that's been in existence for well over 10 years. And now we see this whole new market evolve called Tpas to really take a big position or take a big part of that market. So what we're going to talk about today is why we see this market evolving, what the trends are that are affecting it, and what we think some of the critical criteria are in that market. Jim and I are going to talk about a couple of key issues on this. The first one is why has business transformation become such a key issue? And then about how organizations support business transformation, and then how will these markets evolve and why will they evolve so quickly? So the first thing we want to think about is why has business transformation become such a critical issue? And the reason why is because we have so many market changes that are affecting our organizations. So much has changed politically, environmentally, from a business point of view, from a cultural point of view, that it's really affecting businesses in a major way. And so what we see happening is really a perfect opportunity storm. All the trends that are affecting people's businesses, all the things that are affecting our societies and people's behaviors and technology is causing us to have a perfect storm that will enable us to support business automation and transformation in very new and different ways. Some of those trends that we're seeing.
Well, so Betsy, one of the things that's so interesting about this discussion is that we think every company, every business is a technology business. And that is one of the reasons why we say that your business strategy and your technology strategy need to be intertwined. So there's a couple of key trends here that we just want to touch on quickly as we kind of peel the onion back about transformation platform as a service. Business models, particularly if you're in retail, you're probably waking up and worrying about one big retailer that has trucks driving around in your neighborhood, right? The pandemic, all of us are working remotely. Now we're broadcasting live from San Mateo, California, a town I used to live in, but I live further away now. And it's nice to be back in a building, but most of us are working remote. What happens there? And a lot of enterprises have responded very, very, very well to that, but there's still issues relative to how we manage that in 2022. We're going to talk about a lot about things called intelligent analytics, but also this thing called AI. So we do an awful lot of work in that area and try to explain AI to enterprises. Sometimes people think it's a scary thing, but it's not just intelligent analytics, it's actually real-time analytics, right? Where the application is telling you what's going on inside your business in real time. So, that's one of the things when we started talking about this about 6 years ago, we started talking about digital business, but now we're actually talking about this idea of transformation. So the contextual relationship you have with customers, it's about context. it's not just about a customer that's a name in a CRM application. So you hear experience, we talk about experience a lot, that's kind of overused, but how are you engaging with them? The last area, which Gaurav talked about, we're going to talk about, is the idea of AI emerging not only as a trend, but as an imperative. And so, while a lot of people say, oh, AI, we have AI, but a lot of, we talk to a lot of providers, and a lot of them don't have AI, but yet you do need to have it. And really, the best managers in any company actually are the best at typically pattern recognition. That's really all AI really does. It's recognizing patterns quicker so that the humans can make faster business decisions.
And one of the things I want to add on to this, Jim, is we at Aragon Research have predicts around all of these trends. So if you want to take a look at some of the predicts we have for 2022 and beyond, you might find some of that interesting.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. So really one of the things that says, well, what do you do? And how do we operate going forward? And the bottom is the two things you cannot do. You cannot ignore this. You cannot do nothing. Yet we see many companies paralyzed between the technology team and the business team, where forward-looking enterprises are looking at all these words that are on the side. How do we digitize? But how do we transform? One of the things I say to a lot of technology companies is this. If the world is changing, and if we all agree that there's tremendously large amounts of technology, not just cloud anymore, but hybrid cloud, edge computing, and AI, isn't it really the time that you think that maybe there's ways to do it better rather than trying to ourselves bundle everything together? And that's kind of when we unveil this category. It's not just about automation. It's not just about intelligence. It's not just about digital. It's really about how do you leverage what you have so you can evolve and, what we use, transform. So again, that's really one of the big things. Business and technology kind of have to come together.
Yeah, I completely agree. Everything in your business is about technology today, and everything in technology is about your business. I think one of the big things that people have a really hard time thinking about this question is about how do they support their business going forward is to actually take on a strategic thinking. A lot of organizations can't even think about their organization from a strategic point of view and what it needs to look like in the future. And so thinking about what your business needs to look at and making logical decisions about what your customers and what your business needs is really important. So how do organizations actually support business transformation? I think it's really important for us to look and explore the difference between business automation and business transformation. And as Dale mentioned earlier, business automation is really going to have a high impact on many organizations, as well as many economies. Business automation is about applying technologies to minimize the amount and complexity of human work. And when you couple that with AI, it becomes even more powerful and even more flexible for organizations. And again, will fuel businesses into the future and economies. And business automation is just part of the equation, or the potential equation that we look at. What we're also looking at is business transformation. And when we look at business transformation, we're thinking about rethinking your new business in new ways. We're thinking about how do you create new digital business models? How do you create new sources of revenues? How do you change and evolve existing solutions, business processes and models, and even people? So business transformation starts with your business and says, how are we going to change our business into the future to really meet the new future needs, the new normal that we're all faced with? And this is really about business transformation. When we look at what it takes to support business transformation, we look at this as a couple of steps. The first one is to revise and revisit your business strategy. And one of the things that Jim and I have talked about is this is a really hard thing for a lot of organizations to do, to actually think about what your business strategy is. And the reason why this is really difficult is because it means that they have to rethink their business in many cases. They have to look at their business from an outside-in perspective, not just an inside-out perspective, and think about what their business might look like in the future. It also is important that you need to step back and figure out, what are you doing? What do you need to do in the future? And that takes a very architectural approach, a future state thinking. What does your business need to look like in the future? And how are you going to evolve that? And the other one that's really critical is business change. How do you socialize all the changes that you're needing to support within your organization? We can support all the technology you want, but if you don't make it applicable and attractive and a priority across your business and within your partners and within your business ecosystem, you're going to miss the opportunity to really take advantage of it. And then it's important to get into some of the key technology aspects: deploy, design, iterate, pilot, and then develop and operate. So these are really the steps that we see come into play in business transformation. Now, I want to step back one more thing here, though. A rule of thumb is that automation does not require business transformation. You can automate your business and get all the benefits of business automation without having to go through transformation. And in fact, many organizations I talk to choose to do automation in part of their business and business transformation in other parts of their business. So they don't try and transform the whole business at one time. However, it's important to understand that 95% of business transformation requires some automation. So you have to have some automation as the grounding point, as the foundation point for a lot of your business transformation work. So this is it's important to understand the difference and the level of investment that business automation and business transformation takes. And it's important to understand the relationship. Now, one of the things that I think is also important here is to recognize that business transformation, that 80% of business transformation is about people and business and operational and process change. I, in fact, worked with a large nonprofit that was transforming their business, and the CIO and their head of business transformation got together and came up with a solution based on integrating different applications that they had, and they deployed it out to the marketplace. The thing that they forgot to do is they forgot to get everyone else in the organization involved. They forgot to get all their partners involved. So the project ended up being a major failure because they came up with the right technology solution, but they didn't socialize it and make the business change that they had to. So part of supporting business transformation is really understanding your business and making that change happen.
So look, there's a lot of things to unpack, which you just talked about. So when we actually talk about, how do you go about this and all the things that you see on the slide, one of the things I'll just talk about are the design. And this is one of the fundamental things that's changed in Silicon Valley. It used to be the fundamental thing, and this is a lot with, your enterprise as well. We have to do it ourselves. We have to do it ourselves. Today, that's not the thing. It's really more bundle and go. So the idea of a platform that can not only integrate with APIs, but also help you to automate helps you actually move a lot faster. But when we say, how do we apply, this idea of, design, iterate, test, pilot? One of the conversations we have a lot with clients today is we sell direct. We think we need a store. We have no idea what to do. And so you talk about all the socialization, all the business change, and all the technology change. And a lot of times they have no idea what to do. And they think if they buy an e-commerce platform that they're ready to go, when that's not even 10% of the battle. So the idea of business change and testing and things like that, you can go a lot faster as we start to talk about, companies like SnapLogic with their Tpas platform. This allows you to go a lot faster because you can skip a couple steps, right? Versus having engineering, you got to, reinvent what we do. A lot of times you're doing more integration and then testing and piloting and doing it in weeks, not months, or days, not weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a really critical aspect. So let's go back to the chart that I showed you earlier in terms of the steps that it takes to move towards business transformation. And I talked about this in detail earlier. Why do we at Aragon Research believe that the Tpas market is going to evolve and why it's so important? And the reason why is because in order to support business transformation, it takes more than the services that are currently offered in many cases. If we think about PaaS, the platform as a service, it was really focused on helping organizations design, iterate, pilot, and develop and operate their solutions and get those out to the marketplace. If we think about the iPaaS market, it's really focused in on helping organizations start to do some of that business change, but it's still primarily involved in the deployment and the integration of the technology and the solutions that are required. When we think about Tpas, what we're really thinking about is all three of those. We're thinking about TPAS really helps organizations think about their business, think about their business models, think about their strategy, think about what this needs to change in their business, helps them architect their business and architect their solutions, and then go through the process of designing, iterating, developing, and deploying. That's how you get business transformation happening effectively. You look at the whole picture, not just the technology aspect. So why do we believe that this market is going to evolve so quickly? I think that's really a straightforward answer, which is there's market demand, there's market positioning, and there's market opportunity. So it's the convergence of all of those happening, all the trends that we talked about, all the ways that people are approaching technology, all the ways that people are thinking about their business, that's causing this market to come into fruition very quickly. And we believe, as I said earlier, that this is going to evolve into a large percentage of that marketplace. So where are we today? This is kind of a little bit of a roadmap. Many of you remember the BPM market that was around for a number of years. And BPM was really focused in on process design, process remediation, process integration. Then we started to see a lot of noise the last couple of years for robotic process automation, which is really screen scraping. What we've seen, though, is that RPA has actually become integral into a lot of the digital business platforms. They've become part of those solutions. It's not a separate solution. What we see emerging today, and really where we are today, is the Tpas platform, focused in on integration of applications and solutions and data and services and pulling that all together. What we see emerging now is the Tpas platform, and that's really the next evolution that we see emerging. If we look at the Tpas marketplace, it's really a set of providers that provide cloud-based solutions that enable people to integrate applications, solutions, data, and also provide services into that environment, such as low code, AI, emerging technologies, a lot of cloud-based capabilities. So that's really the Tpas market. When we think about the Tpas market, it's a set of providers that are specifically enabling people to reimagine and transform their business. It provides all the integration capabilities that we expect, and also helps them think about their business, redesign their business with business process capabilities, business capability modeling, business services, and emerging technologies. So that's the Tpas market as we see evolving.
Well, Betsy, one of the things that's so interesting about this, and at Aragon we've done about 8 categories in the last 10 years, is people say, well, what are you doing? What is Aragon doing now, coming up with a new market? But here's the thing I would say is, first of all, we have a digital architecture. And after 6 years of talking about digital architectures with end user enterprises, what they said is, we can't really get rid of stuff and start new, which is what a lot of the SIs are telling us to do. We have to keep some of our stuff. And if it's a large enterprise, the applications you have. So that's one of the things when we look at Tpas, which is transforming, but it's not always replacing.
Right.
And so that's really how the gestation came together. It's the learning and discussions with thousands of clients relative to, hey, we just can't do that. I mean, particularly if it's a global 2000 enterprise, there's no way you're going to replace some of those systems overnight. So again, that's the beauty of basically the research architecture we have. So we're positioning this as a brand new category. I know you're going to talk about some of the things that are part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I think is really important that people understand is the relationship between Tpas and Tpas from a capability point of view. If we look at Tpas, it focuses on integration of applications, EDI capabilities, file and data transfer, messaging and event management, low-code development. A lot of these are critical integration capabilities that we've had for years and have needed for years, and they've continued to evolve. When we look at the Tpas market, I want to make sure that it's clear that it is a superset of Tpas. So it's essentially subsuming that Tpas market with capabilities like scenario planning, business strategy planning, templates that people can use, information design and flow, capability modeling, and operational modeling. These are some of the capabilities that we see emerging. Now, do we think all the vendors right off the bat are going to have all these capabilities for the Tpas marketplace? No, but we clearly see these capabilities emerging in many of the providers that are critical in this marketplace. So let me go back to what we started this out with, and that is that by 2025, the TPAS market will subsume 45% of the current iPaaS market. We believe now that you can understand why we see this market is emerging, the importance of this market, and lastly, why we think this market is going to emerge so quickly, and how important we think it is for organizations to be able to leverage this market to support their real business transformation requirements. Going forward, organizations that are hoping to accomplish business model transformation have to think about future state first. You have to think about your strategy. You have to think about your business models. You have to think about those capabilities, and then go look at the solutions that you need to put in place to support those models. And that's really what the TPAS market enables you to do. End user organizations must think about things like design thinking, outside in thinking, that support their business in new and different ways, and then look for the services that are going to support the requirements. And then you need to, last thing is that you need to look at your market and understand how it's going to be impacted by business transformation. It's important to realize that you may not be transforming your entire business at one time. You may be transforming a part of the business and automating part of the business. And you need to make the strategic decisions that make sense for your business.
And one more thing to add.
Yeah, please.
So the only thing I want to reiterate, this, some of the things that Dale and Gaurav talked about, is when you actually look at one of the big market changes in the category is the infusion of AI.
Yeah.
So we made some big announcements last week at our event. And one of the things we said is that there is no AI market. There's a market for AI ops. Every market will have AI infused to that. So when you start looking at providers, one of the things you say is, what's your roadmap for AI? And I know that obviously you heard Gaurav talk about that here at the Enterprise Automation Summit. It's one of the big things we talk about as well. And so when you say about those home runs and massive automation, how will you infuse AI into your product roadmaps?
Absolutely.
For everyone, a round of applause. Thank you for that. I have a couple of questions. So
Absolutely.
again, thank you for the presentation. That was excellent. So you talked a little bit about evolving, and you said it's a lot for people to go through. Now, so we talk about iPaaS. There's also other categories like just data integration is a separate category in certain areas, and APIM. Like how much of really is it a tectonic shift and across those categories, not just what iPaaS? How much of a shift is it really to look at something like TPAS? Because I love the fact that analysts, my favorite analysts, that are actually talking about how a market is evolving, because there's some analysts that don't necessarily follow that train of thought. They want to go and stick with the same thing. But how much of a big shift do you think it's going to be in the market across these categories?
I don't think it's going to be a big shift for end user organizations at all. I think end users are already here.
Right.
They're needing that business integration. They're wanting that business tie as well. They know that the business change is what's important. And if you talk to any business leader, they know that the core of their business is that people side of the picture. It's actually the IT organization, and some of us who are recovering geeks like myself, who that's going to be the biggest transformation for them, because they're used to approaching a problem from an inside out perspective and thinking about things from a technology perspective. So I don't think it's going to be a tectonic shift for the business people and the senior executive leaders. It's going to be a big shift for people who are more traditional IT thinkers.
Gotcha.
And it's an opportunity for them to think differently.
Right.
But I would say, Dale, that you're right on point relative to how other people are thinking about this. And as you know, Betsy and I both used to work at a very large research firm that is big. We're small and we're fast. And so this is one of the things I say. If, and we have events too, and we say to a lot of the people that attend them, it's like, if the world is changing and technology is making a massive impact, then why is everybody worrying about the old categories, right? TPAS is the new category, and basically it's going to allow you to skip a number of steps and maybe not have to buy a couple of solutions from a bunch of best-of-breed providers.
All right, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And on that topic, so some people may have bought some of these, smaller. Gaurav refers to it as a toy. And that's fine if you're doing some of these point-to-point kind of things. But as you grow, and everyone wants to be a large enterprise, everyone wants to evolve their business. But how would you advise those kind of customers, those kind of clients, that at some point they're going to need more scale, more enterprise grade? Like, what should they be thinking about to kind of evolve their own organization?
So here's one of the things I would just say, because we actually talk to a lot of business leaders, and we have these technology arcs that basically rate the maturity of technologies. And the interesting dichotomy between the business leaders that are looking at the emerging stuff, like the upper left, going from a very new to early adoption, versus the mature, or sometimes the IT people are looking at, the business people are not afraid. So the thing I would say for business operations people that are listening to this, you need to look at this new category. It's going to allow you to skip a couple steps. If you've got, some older stuff or some lower end stuff, you can just push that aside, bring the new stuff in, and you'll leapfrog some of the things you were thinking about. Might take you 24 months. It might take you 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I would also think some of the things that you at SnapLogic have been talking about in terms of architecture, ecosystems, all of those things are really important. Now's not the time to drop your architecture. You've got to think about those things, which I think are really important.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And you mentioned AI, and obviously Jim and I have had this conversation many times around, is it real AI, and everyone AI washing? I mean, I think that's still going on. But how important do you think those kind of capabilities should be as people go through their assessments, as they look at vendors? Where should they place AI and potentially future capabilities or that kind of feature functionality above some of the core things that are traditionally iPaaS? Like, where would you recommend? Because a lot of customers are also a little bit skeptical or a little bit afraid of putting some of that in. They feel like they may have to make more of an investment. How do you prioritize AI above some of the core functionality?
So here's what I would probably say. If you're talking to SnapLogic and others, one of the things I would say is, it used to be about recommendations. Hey, the AI can make a recommendation. That now it's about predictions. Can it actually help you predict? You make this change, you might increase sales. You make this change, you might increase customer sat. And as you look at these things that are applied, you're applying AI to an application. That's where this TPAS and some of the things that SnapLogic is doing. But again, sometimes you got to step back and say, people say, well, we don't think AI is real. And so we actually give a talk, and we've actually taught a lot of business teams and IT teams. We call it building AI fighter jets. And we actually go through the 10 fundamentals what you got to look at relative to AI. But here's the thing. If you're buying from providers like SnapLogic, ask them for their AI roadmaps. It's not about buying AI. It's about buying a roadmap from your established providers and saying, hey, how can we do predictions on this set of applications? That's the thing you should be asking for. It is real. And for the people that question it, either they may need a little education, but for the vendors that question it, maybe they don't have any AI.
Yeah. I think one of the things we talked about at our Transform tour last week was that just as there's difference intelligence by humans, there's also difference intelligence by AI.
Right.
So just don't think that all AI is going to be the same. It's going to be dependent upon the solution and the maturity of that technology within the provider. So, we use this AI term like it's a big term, and it's going to get some backlash if people aren't really specific about what they mean by AI and what it means to support AI.
Yeah, no, that's
in their specific instance.
Yeah, and I think because every enterprise is different,
right?
You have to really look at what problem you're trying to solve. And I like
exactly
your suggestion, the 10 things to think about when you're trying to put AI in your organization. And it's not a solution that you buy. It's how are you going to help me get to outcomes? And I think that's the great thing about AI. It's about outcomes. It's about business outcomes, helping the business do more. Okay, last question, because we're almost into the time. What is for each of you, the one most exciting thing that you're looking forward to over the next 2 years around TPAS?
Well, for me, it's going to be producing more research in this area, looking at all the vendors and providers in this area. I'm working on some specific research globe right now within Aragon Research. But also for me, an exciting part is we finally get a way, a mechanism to start to bring together the business leader thinking and the technology thinking together and marry them together in a cooperative way. It's no longer that barrier, that wall between the two. We now have a platform and a way to be able to have that discussion come together.
Dale, I think the thing is there's a lot of discussions. We're in Silicon Valley, and there's a lot of secrets in Silicon Valley about how you can get products to market faster. The thing I like is seeing the jaws drop when I explain to, like the client, did you know you don't have to develop all that? Did you know that all that stuff you could actually do right now? And they're like, how could that possibly be? and hence TPAS.
Or did you know that you don't need 100 developers to actually
Exactly.
implement and maintain that?
Like you don't have to develop your own APIs,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. Well, that's great. So that's the end of this session. Thank you both. Excellent
you, Dale.
talk, really insightful. So we will be back. Stay with us in 30 seconds. We have two industry, I'm going to call them industry experts around integration and automation coming from SnapLogic, Michael Nixon, our VP of Product Management, and Michael Nixon, our VP of Product Marketing, and Mark Gibbs, our VP of Product Management. Stay with us. We'll be back in 30 seconds.